Hi, you are watching Toon Matrix. Please watch the previous part for better understanding. The chapter starts with the scene where the message was written on the wall. Then we see a car coming at a very high speed and almost hits the person walking at the crosswalk. The person driving the car is reporter Choi, and she yells at the person to keep his eyes open while walking on the road. The person says that he was walking on a crosswalk. Choi says she don't have time for this and drives away in the car. We see that the person was none other than Jiyong Kim. The scene shifts to building area where many police sirens were wailing. The paramedics were taking the injured detective to the ambulance, then the lead detective of this case arrives in his car in a hurry at the scene, and then rushes inside the building. Their two lady officers were helping the girl victim. The girl says while sobbing that the detective was stabbed. One of the lady officers says that he has been transported to the hospital, so don't worry. The lady officer was going to ask about the case, but the lead detective stops her by saying that the girl has to calm down first. We see some people gossiping about the incident among themselves. The police was inquiring about the incident from an old man. They say that if the man heard arguing, why didn't he call the police? The man replies that he thought that it was not that serious, but just another couple bickering at each other. Then Choi also reaches at the scene. She says to herself that she was thinking right. Deokyeong Jong came to retaliate against the previous victim. She tries to go inside, and asks that at what time the incident reported, but she was stopped by the police that were standing guard there. She shouts and asks did the police responded promptly after getting the call? Were appropriate victim protection measures were taken? The police replies that the incident was reported 9 minutes ago and the police arrived at the scene within 3 minutes. After hearing this, Choi says to herself, 9 minutes ago. Perhaps, he might be still around and she have to find him or at least the trace of him. Choi runs to find the vigilante. The scene shifts and the lead detective is standing in front of the message that was written on the wall. The two men standing behind thinks what does the last phrase, sacred net, means. The lead detective explains that the scared net is a net cast by heavens to entrap the sinners. It may seem loose but at the end, the sinners will be entrapped by it. He further says that the text is from a Chinese philosophical book called The Way of Virtue. The man standing next to him asks is he familiar with this type of stuff? To which the detective replies that sacred net is one of his favorite phrases. The scene shifts to the bus, which goes from Seoul Station to Police University. Inside the bus, the trainees are laughing after seeing Kim sleeping with his mouth open. One of them says to him to wake up as they have arrived at the academy, and he further says that Kim must have had a fun weekend if he is this much exhausted. At the police academy, we are taken to a lecture hall, where a professor is giving lecture on criminal investigation. We see that Kim is also present in this lecture. The professor put some light on the national murder stats, and shows a chart where a decade worth of information about murder is being compared. The professor says that the average arrest rate of murders in last decade is 98.5%, which means a large number of murderers have been arrested. Kim with a bruised hands writes it down, while making a poker face in the class. The professor further says that if they take a closer look at the arrested perpetrator's criminal history, 26% has no priors, while 28% have over 6 priors. Based on this, he says that lots of murderers have priors, but there is also a high rate of first-time offenders. The professor says that it is very likely that the so-called first-time offenders, they could have committed multiple crimes in the past but was simply not caught. Kim in his mind says that Professor, you are correct and gives a slight smile. In the hallway, some trainees are seeing the news of last night's incident. Kim while looking at them says in his mind that he got a little too emotional, he can't believe that he killed the man like that. While giving off a slight smile, Kim says from now on he have to be more careful so as to not get caught. Next we see a news channel where a reporter briefs about Deokyeong's murder incident. He explains that Jong was already familiar with the police investigation method, so he cut off his ankle monitor and made it look like he fled on a ship. After creating this smokescreen, Jong went looking for his previous victim, and in the process he injured a delivery man and a police officer who was guarding the victim with a weapon and acidic liquid. Jong attempted to retaliate against the victim. But someone shows up just in time and restrained Jong. In a physical confrontation with the unknown person, Jong was stabbed in the chest and died due to excessive bleeding. The only eyewitness was Jong's previous victim and she is unable to make any statement due to the shock. In the next scene, we are taken to Professor Junyop Lee's office. 2 trainees are present there, one of them is Jiyong and the other person's name is Sihanouk. The professor says that he called them here today to ask for a favor. He further says that there is a big case in Anyang and he have been called to take part in the investigation. And asks them while he is away, he would like the 2 of them to complete his report that he was working on. Sihanouk says that if it's a big case, is Professor talking about Deokyung's case? The professor replies in affirmative, and further says that the police is struggling with the case and media is in a frenzy too. The professor says that the police have checked all the surveillance cameras and dashcams in the area but got nothing. He says that this one is like a phantom. Then Kim with a poker face says that isn't it possible if the perpetrator was someone who lives inside the complex? They could have come out during the commotion and accidentally killed Jong in the process. Isn't it possible that the person simply went back into their house, afraid of what they've done? Sihanouk says that it can be possible and in this case it would not be considered self-defense. But to Kim's surprise, the professor says that some things are not made public and it was premeditated. Sihanouk with a grim expression says that, if that is the case, could it be done by the vigilante? The professor shouts and says that he is a police academy trainee, and advises Sihanouk to not use such phrases conjured by some third-rate reporter. Sihanouk replies in affirmative. Then professor instructs them to only use the computer present in his office, and do not take any content of the report out of this office and also taking pictures are prohibited. They both replied in affirmative. While sitting in front of a computer, Kim says to himself that the information is being kept from the public, proving that this was a premeditated crime. He says that, first the letter was not made public, is there anything else that he may have missed? Then Kim sees a top suspect personnel files and gives a smile. He says it's from quite a while back. In the list he sees that there is a name that is underlined, and says what you have to do to get your name underlined on a list of horrendous criminals. He looked into this file, and sees, name Deopseo. Daejeon High Court. The scene shifts to the complex where Deokyung incident happened. Choi approaches a lady, and introduces herself as a reporter. The lady says that she is not interested in the interview. Choi says that she is not asking for an interview. If the lady gives Choi her time then Choi will compensate her. Choi says that all the lady has to do is take pictures of the crime scene. If she can provide Choi usable pictures then she will give 500,000 won to the lady, and if the lady provides detailed pictures, she will give 2 million won to her. When the lady went away, Choi's colleague asks is it alright to do this? Choi replies with a hateful expression that if the police is keeping us out of that place, then there is definitely something. Choi in her mind further says that she bet it's a trace of the vigilante. We see the lady going to the place of incident, and arguing with the police officer as she was having trouble to go in. She says that she is the resident of this complex. Is she not allowed to go to her own house? At Anyang Police Department, the detectives are discussing among themselves that how Deokyung Jong made his way in the building and injured the deliveryman and the officer guarding Jong's previous victim. When he was going to retaliate against the victim, the mystery figure appeared and ultimately Jong was restrained, and was forced to write a letter on the wall. Then the superintendent says that if Jong used blood to write, does that mean Jong was already bleeding pretty badly? To which one of the detectives says that they are not sure what happened to him. The superintendent shouts that this case is of utmost importance and they need to clarify this matter. He says that the cause of Jong's death is excessive bleeding, and since the weapon belongs to the Jong, if he got accidentally hurt while engaging with the mystery figure, then it is possible that a righteous citizen stepped in to help the victim and accidentally killed Jong. But if he was stabbed with intent then the mystery figure is a murderer. Then the lead detective says that on the wall Jong wrote "Sacred Net" out of nowhere. The perp who forced Jong to write this, was watching him write the message. And maybe perp heard the police approaching and for whatever reason, when Jong wrote "Until forgive," the perp made him write "Sacred Net" in a hurry and ran away. Considering the fact that the perp made Jong write on the wall in the midst of all that frenzy, and the fact that he chose the phrase "Sacred Net," which means, what goes around comes around. It would seem that the perp is not trying to hide his crime, rather he wants people's attention. The detective says that considering the circumstances, the perp was watching Jong while writing the letter and when Jong was done writing, the perp stabbed Jong in execution style, so they must consider the perp a murderer. As they were discussing, suddenly a man came inside calling for the superintendent. then we see Report 25 news channel where the same man came to blabber something, but this time let's hear what he says. The man says that this channel was the first to reveal Deokyeong Jong's real name, and this time they brought exclusive images of the crime scene where Jong was killed. He says that there was a lot of doubt over the case as the police refused to reveal the crime scene, but to the people's surprise Jong left behind a message written with blood. He says stay tuned as they are going to reveal the image after a commercial. In the next panel, the reporter says that Chairman Yil Choi is joining them, and he asks what does sacred net means. After seeing this, the superintendent yells at the detectives that how did the pictures of crime scene leaked out. And we see all the detectives with a shocked expression. In the next scene Chang Hyun-guak is calling Choi. Guak says that, at first he thought that they were just gonna get off the charts viewers' ratings, but now he thinks that they might have gotten involved in something serious. He says that the website's bulletin board is blowing up, and says that this is not some sort of crime drama but rather a social phenomenon. Choi replies that she already told him that this news will change the world. Guak with a serious look shouts and says to not take it lightly, there is lots of criticism too. They are being accused of reporting a criminal who has taken law in their hands like a piece of entertainment. Choi replies, if they are criticizing us then let them do so, they are the true fanatics. Guak says, this isn't a joke, we are journalists. Choi cuts him off while shouting and calling his name. Guak gets startled. Choi with a loud voice says that the power of press is derived from viewership ratings and view counts, and besides Guak was the one who was whining about low ratings. She further says press. This is modern-day Colosseum. In Rome they didn't just execute the criminals, they would gather up all the hated criminals, as tens of thousands outraged citizens watched, jeering. Gladiators would enter and execute the criminals. The more pleasing and vicious the strike of sword, the more popular gladiator became. She says how our criminals who are sentenced to death are released back into the society after few years. And why doesn't anyone tell us the identities of these heinous criminals responsible for despicable crimes? Why are we stripped of the right to protect ourselves from the danger? This is how the citizens have become outraged audience, and one of these enraged citizens have decided to take out these scumbags for all the world to see. She says that the message, Sacred Net, is proof of this. The person they dubbed as Vigilante stepped forward, volunteering to be the gladiator at our Colosseum. She says we are not journalists, but we are gladiator promoters. And she asks, if now he understood what they have to do for their viewers? She says they have to provide their viewers with the best spectacle in the world. Mr. Guak was stunned and then do a 180 and says that he was just checking on her, and she don't have to worry about the higher-ups. Then he asks what is she doing right now? She replies that the vigilante has a strong sense of leadership and desire for control, he is a diligent man with a steady job, and he is almost 40 years old. She further says that the vigilante shows as his target through media coverage and does not have access to privileged information, so right now, she is picking a target for the vigilante. The scene shifts and we are shown the bruised hand of Kim. He is surfing through the criminal list and as he sees the information about the criminal Soo Duyup, he starts trembling while making a serious face. Then suddenly Sihanouk taps on his shoulder and asks why is he so jumpy. And further says that it is time for them to leave Professor Lee's office. Kim says okay, and while going back to the dorms Kim says in his mind, Soo Duyup. Next is your turn while making a little serious and blank expression on his face. The panel changes and we are briefed about a case, culprit 1, 15, female and culprit 2, 18, female, they both often interacted while they were on the run. After running out of money, they chose victim A, 34, female, who had previously treated them with hospitality. The reason they chose her the target because they knew she would open the door when they rang the bell. They also took help of culprit 3. Soo Duyup, 22, male. They became acquaintance with him while they were on the run. After the door was opened all the culprits entered the victim's home and proceeded to subdue her. However, the victim's 5-year-old daughter, after witnessing such sight began to cry. The three, ignoring the pleas of the victim, and dragged the child to the bathroom and killed her. Furthermore, they killed the victim and moved her body to the veranda. After the two were killed, the three raided the house, even boiling and eating some ramen. Eventually, the son, 8 years old, returned home after the school had ended. Then he was lured into the home and then killed. Victim A's body showed signs of a severe assault, which the three admitted to being evidence of torture in an attempt to draw out her credit card password. The total amount of money they managed to gather after mercilessly murdering a family of 3 was 68,000 won. Using the money, the group went to sing at a karaoke bar, and 11 hours after the crime, the 3 were arrested. Culprit 1 admitted to the murder of 3, but due to her being a minor, her sentence was reduced from a life sentence to 15 years. Culprit 2, who was 18, was sentenced 17 years, and culprit 3, Soo Do-yup, stated that he had merely followed the 2 and the family was killed after he had returned from buying ramen. However, he still received 11 years of sentence. The husband, who had lost his wife and children in such a horrible way, after criticizing the court for doling out just sentences, said that he could not bear to watch the criminals walk around freely after few years, and left the country. Next we see that Kim is watching the post made by Soo Do-yup, and reading the comments where Soo Do-yup is not even showing any guilt towards the dead victims. After reading the comments, Kim makes a frightening look. The scene shifts to ABC broadcast station and we see that reporter Choi and Mr. Guak are greeting each other. Then Mr. Guak says that all the ad spots for their program have been filled and the price went up as well. Choi says, "Why are you happy just with that? Your ambitions are smaller than I thought." Mr. Guak felt embarrassed, and then he says that they will do the exclusive coverage on the Vigilante. Then Choi asks Mr. Guak that, "Did you see the file I sent?" He says, "The case they are going to reporting this time, right?" And asks, "Why are we reporting on 3 people at once?" Choi, while making an exotic expression, says, "To try and see who is Vigilante's type." In the next panel we are taken to the police academy. In the hallway a group of trainees is chatting among them. One of them asks that did they know that Professor Sun Gil-soo is going to attend a debate over Vigilante on a radio program? One of them says that they don't even know if the Vigilante is real. To which another person replies that because of sacred net, in Deokyeong Jong's case, the Vigilante has become an accepted truth, and he definitely wrote that knowing the meaning of it. He further says that the Vigilante is provoking the entire world. Then another person says that the Vigilante most likely has a steady career with a leadership position. We see that Kim is listening to their conversation and gets shocked upon hearing this. Then another person says that, "I think the Vigilante is a psychopath with a good education, and he probably prepared the phrase, Heaven's Net, by repeatedly doing image training, and he came up with the idea to make a criminal write a phrase that represents justice." Again another person says that since Deokyeong Jong assaulted several people, and even if he died during the assault, the killer would have an obvious justification. However, the Vigilante has accepted a great risk in order to display his beliefs to the public. This is a man with confidence that he won't get caught, a person with a strong desire of control. Kim contemplates to himself, everyone is having fun with analysis. Is it really that fun? It is not an difficult analysis, but it is an analysis without much evidence, except for one thing. I didn't prepare the phrase Heaven's Net, it came spontaneously to me at the scene. Kim with a blank expression says that, "I didn't use that phrase while accepting the risk of getting caught, instead that phrase will help hide me, because if I wanted to this, not getting caught is important." And Kim walks away. Then Kim spent his days while following daily routine at the academy. Then Friday came. In the bus, Kim's friends asks that is he going out again? One friend asks, "Where are you going? You have a girlfriend, right? It's not like you are meeting the mentor for 2 days straight, just cough up." Kim replies, "You caught me. Actually I am preparing for CSAT and thinking of retaking the test and going to medical school." Then his friend replies, "When you are saying it, it does not sound like a joke." Then he says, "Spend this week's time with us." The second friend also asks the same to Kim. Kim, while making a blank expression, says in his mind, "That's a problem, this is my own calling, don't bother me." He further says in his mind that, using the data from this week, I am determining if Soo Do-yup is material worth working on. While flinching, Kim says to his friends that, "It's not possible, you guys can't handle it, and you talk too much." His friends shouts at him, "What do you see us as?" Then Kim gets a notification about the news is updated for the topic Kim has selected, and we see that the news is updated by report 25. After seeing it for a while, Kim closes the notification. In the next scene we are taken to a nightclub, where some pretty girls are dancing and having fun. We see Kim and his friends at the club, and Kim's friend are stunned. One of them asks Kim, I thought that you only studied and worked out, but how do you know a place like this? Kim replies, through SNS. A girl approaches Kim and keeps her hand around his neck and leans onto him. Seeing this sight, Kim's friend were taken aback and remained speechless. Then the girl asks Kim, can you support me to the bathroom? Kim replies, sure. Then Kim, while saying to his friends to have fun, goes with the girl. While the girl was complimenting Kim, Kim speaks to himself, the picture that is on Soo Deop's SNS is always from the same angle, which means that he is always at an exclusive spot. Then Kim glares at a seat where two men were sitting and says to himself, found him. A man says, wow, isn't that the 2 million won set? Where are you getting the money from, to order something like that? Soo Deop replies, it was torture in prison, I thought the world would totally change by the time I came out. But, I met my boss there, and my life turned around. The man sitting with Deop says that, who would have thought that I would be living so well after involving with something like a runaway fam? Deop says that, it was heaven's will that I went to prison, truly a blessing in disguise. And now those kids will be released in a year or two, so everyone's doing well. The man asks, then how did you get released first? Deop replies that we matched our story, that the youngest was the one who killed the lady and kids, and we knew she would only get 15 years of sentence. You ask why? Because she is a 15-year-old minor. The man asks, the judge believed that? Deop replies there is no evidence, nothing. And says don't you know the law? Kim was listening their conversation. Deop with a devilish smile says that if there is any doubt, then that is to defendant's advantage. And then they went to dance with the girls. Then we see Kim, with an excited expression he says, yeah, heaven did free you from prison just in time, to meet me. The scene shifts to the police academy, where the trainees were jogging. Then we see Kim's friend who were making an awkward face while running. In the corridor, they call Kim's name and then, Sihanouk with a worried face asks, how far did you go with the girl at the club last night? Kim says, that we agreed to pretend it didn't happen or to at least not talk about it at the academy. His friends says we are just curious. Kim replies, I sent her home in a taxi, let's stop talking about this. Then they asks, could we maybe go this week? Kim cuts them off and says, I am going to a jiu-jitsu competition this weekend. His friends make a frustrating look. Then Kim asks, did you guys have fun that day? They with an awkward smile replies that, it was great. But in reality they awkwardly tried and went home embarrassed. Then Kim, while making a selfish smile, says to himself, friends, if something unexpected happens, become my alibi. Then we see Jiyong sitting in front of his computer in a dark room. Jiyong says, this bastard. There is no need to do extra surveillance. He posts a picture on his social media every 1 to 2 hours. If I look at the order of the pictures, I might be able to pick out his path. Kim says, he's going around in every decent club in the area. If it's like this, there could be a chance in the club or while he is moving between the clubs. Let's make a list of clubs mentioned here and find a good place to do work. Then Jiyong sees a comment, and says the victim's account. He clicks on the link and sees a video of victim playing and spending time with the family. Kim starts sweating and then reads an emotional comment made by dad where he wrote that there won't be any new posts, but when I come here I feel that we're all together again, and Kim starts crying. Then a comment came from Deop making fun of the previous comment. After seeing Deop's comment, Kim clenches his fist, and then we see Kim furious and with a killing intent. Kim takes out a phone from the drawer and started doing something. Kim says, the majority of entertainment establishments have cameras connected to internet, for the owner, to check the state of business from outside. Even if I am not the one who hacks it, there are many people who hacks places like this. Then Kim founds a footage, and says, as I thought, the club Deop frequently goes to has its cameras hacked. If I compare the hacked feed with Soo Deop's post on social media, and then Kim finds him, then he compares other photos as well. While comparing, Kim says these are not misleads, he actually went around uploading the pictures live. Then, if I pick out clubs that have their floor plans available and compare the locations of the hacked security cameras. A club that Soo Deop frequents, with wide viewing angles from the cameras. A club called Kuntak. Kim says, when Deop comes to this club, he parks his car on quiet third-floor parking basement. In order to get to the elevator from there, you have to climb about half a story of stairs. Sometime in between 3 and 4 in the morning. Kim taps at a place on the floor map and says, "This place is perfect." He further says, if there is a problem, it would be that Soo Duyup is always accompanied by a person and that he doesn't valet, but instead parks the car himself. Kim contemplates, why? To escape quickly if he's chased by someone? Is he being mindful of the fact that something could happen? Kim says, I would have to go to the club again this week, as there are places that need a bit more analysis. While looking at post of Duyup, Kim says, Soo Duyup, it hurts whenever I see someone like you. It gets hard to breathe. Kim clenches his fists and says, you are a bastard that can't be clueless like others. You need to know why this is happening to you. Just you wait, we see Kim enraged. In the bus, Kim was listening to the news, where someone reports that, some days ago police announced that the death of Deokyeong Jong would be treated as a murder case. And this caused a large wave of criticism. He further reports that the reason was the phrase, Heaven's Net, written on the wall. And due to the meaning of that phrase, the internet dubbed Deokyeong's killer as a chivalrous criminal. And a drunken man even attempted to damage the crime scene, yelling on the scene officers to stop chasing the vigilante. Prank calls claiming to be vigilante flooded the police lines. Many people argue that the vigilante prevented the death of the woman, and that the police is trying to illogically investigate it as murder case, to merely save their faces. It is even being said that police are not effective, as they can only begin investigating after the crime is done, the victims are harmed and the people are killed. He further reports that, clearly, the public is making the investigation of Deokyeong's murder increasingly difficult. After hearing the report, Kim gives a slight smile. At Kuntak Club, Kim goes into a room and says to himself, there aren't any cameras that I missed, and says it's perfect. He goes where people are having fun, and looks around. Then he finds Soo Duyup. And says, no matter how much I think about it, I just can't understand. Enlighten me. A bastard like you, who kills women and children for some chump change, why do we have to release you, pretending you have been rehabilitated? Does a bastard like you, who doesn't have an ounce of repentance, and instead makes a mockery of the victim, deserve a chance at new life? Then Duyup gets a call and he goes somewhere. Kim notices it, and says, he left all by himself, and without his phone. Kim contemplates, where is he going, and says, it doesn't matter, this is a chance. Kim chases after him, and while making an ecstatic face says, Soo Duyup, your turn has come. Today is your, and we see someone's hand coming from behind calling him. The hand taps on his shoulder, and Kim got startled. He stopped to see who it is and has a surprised look on his face. We see, she is the same girl who was with Kim when he came to club last time. She says, we finally met, and asks what do you go around doing. Kim was unable to recognize her and asks who are you? The girl replies, don't you remember me? I asked you to escort me, but you just threw me by the stairway. Kim with an apologetic face says, really? That happened? I can't remember because I was so drunk, and says sorry for that incident and says I will leave, you have fun. The girl stops him and asks, where are you going? Did you not hear? I said I was looking for you. Kim while removing her hand from his shoulder says, I don't know why were you looking for me, but I have some business to take care of. The girl replies, I know that business, it's something to do with cool Duyup, right? Kim gets shocked and sweat starts dripping from his face. The girl further says, I saw you watching Duyup the entire time, and it was easy to tell that you were looking for a chance. Kim was taken aback by her words. She asks Kim to follow her. While going with the girl, Kim contemplates to himself, how should I handle this? Does she know something? About me? No, that can't be. At worst, it'll just be a petty complaint. He calls himself stupid and says, I should have scanned my surroundings, it slipped my mind that I can also be observed by others. Let's try not to make a big deal out of this and proceed carefully. The girl brought Kim to a stairway and says, if it's here, we can talk without anyone interrupting. Kim looks at her with a blank face. Then the girl shows a paper and asks Kim, the reason you were watching Duyup was because of this, right? Kim was dumbfounded and asks himself, what is that? A paper? The girl says, judging by the light in your eyes, you were really looking for this, and says this is a new product. Though I won't tell you what it is called. She briefs Kim that in America, they steep a book in drugs, and then mail it to Korea. After the book is delivered, the pages are cut. And if you put a piece on the roof of your mouth, the drugs slowly seep out and hits you like a wave. She further says, you were looking for Duyup to get your hands on this, right? But too bad, he only sells it to foreign students. When I saw you that day, I knew I wanted you, and asks Kim, you want to do this? She further says, do you know? This is much better if you do it while kissing. Kim was shocked and says to himself, drugs? Soo Duyup, this bastard was selling drugs. So that's what he meant by meeting the boss there. The money he throws every night, the reason he goes around clubs, it was because he was selling drugs. The girl, while approaching Kim for kissing, asks him, what are you doing? I told you you can't buy this. Don't you want it? The scene shifts to the bus where Kim was sitting by the window lowering his head. Two fellow trainees started to talk each other, and one of them asks, why does Jiyong look so down? To which other replies, you know that Mingu also went to that jiu-jitsu competition, right? He told me that Jiyong lost in first round and left early because of that upset. The first one says, you are kidding. Jiyong lost in first round? Was the opponent national level athlete or something? And says, but he is upset over something like that? That's pretty unexpected. The other replies, seems he's the type to obsess over competitions. We see that Kim was clenching his fists, calling his action amateurish, and says, was I someone this amateurish? He calls himself pathetic while making a frustrating look. Then we see Kim going to Professor Lee's office. He sits in front of a computer and opens the files of suspect information. He says, let's look through the cases involving distribution of drugs and places involving like that club. He reads that, pot, weed, blunt, cannabis, product like these are circulating pretty loosely. However, drugs like that paper are only distributed in small circle, like Americans or foreign students. Even the way they smuggles it in, is the same. Once in possession of the smuggled drugs, they distribute it to proper sellers, who sell it to only trustworthy customers and in limited amount to prevent any information leak. Even if there is a report, as the operation is done in secrecy, so only the seller will be arrested. As it is structured in such a way, the seller is the one whose shoulders are the danger. Naturally, all transactions are done with cash. If in case the seller runs off with the cash or drugs, people unknown to the seller are stationed at the club to surveil them. Kim leans on the chair and thinks about when the girls caught him, and calls himself stupid. He says, the guards watching Duyup could have noticed me. Kim, while making a frustrating look, says, if it's like this, it's pointless. I have to give up, even after doing all that work. Kim leaves the professor office while saying, I can't touch him. I'll get caught. We see Kim jogging with his fellow trainees while making a grim expression. Then we see him in the library. He says to himself, there are two principles I choose my projects on. Someone who is released early compared to the crime they committed, and someone who keeps committing on crime in spite of being released. Kim, while surfing through the library, says Soo Duyup killed a woman and her children for some measly chump, and in order to receive reduced sentence, he used a loophole in the law and dumped the blame on the youngest. After being released, he goes around trafficking drugs and ridiculing the remaining family members. Kim, while opening a book of crime and punishment, says, the reason I haven't been caught yet is because I was lucky, but it's different this time. He puts the book back on the shelf. And scene shifts to the bus. While leaning on the chair, he says, I can't touch him. Messing with Soo Duyup is dangerous. And suddenly he makes a serious face and says, but that is why I want to kill him even more. At Kuntak Club, we see Duyup walking towards his car while humming. And he finds a note at his car, and gets shocked upon reading it, as it was written turn yourself in with a number below it. He looks around and then keeps the note in his pocket. In the washroom, he sits on a toilet seat and calls Sung Yeol. Duyup says, I am giving you a number, so call it and find out what kind of person they are. Duyup restlessly waits for the call back, and when the call came, Duyup asks what happened. Sung Yeol replies, what are you doing? Are you joking? That number is the Busan Police Drug Division Chief's number. Duyup gets shocked and sweat starts dripping from his face. Sung Yeol asks him, why did you tell me to call that number? Duyup replies, just be quiet, and asks, what did you say? Sung Yeol replied, I just said, I made a wrong call. Duyup asks, did it go through? Sung Yeol says, how should I know? And says, don't call me again, we don't have anything to do with each other, and he cuts the call. Duyup was as shocked, he contemplates to himself, did I get caught? Then why did they not capture me and used a note instead? There is only one possible reason to send a note like this. While putting his hands on his mouth, and sweating, he says they are telling me to rat on the supplier. Then Duyup goes at the outskirts of the city in his car, and meets a person. Duyup gives money to the person says good work. And then the person gives him a new book and says, it has around 120 to 130 pages. Duyup after looking at the book says, this time it's a Japanese book, and worriedly asks, perhaps, does the supply comes in from Busan? The person intensely glares at Duyup. Duyup gets little scared and says I was just asking. And leaves in his car. At the club, Duyup say to himself, what do I do continuously? And anxiously says someone in here is watching me. He sweatingly says, I don't want to go to prison again, but I don't want this lifestyle to end. He says, okay, let's think about this calmly, there's no proof that police is the one who made that note. He says, yeah, I am just freaking out over a little prank that someone pulled on me. For example, a prank from someone who ran out of money and can't buy again. Duyup worriedly thinks, are they going to report me? While tapping on the table, he says, I can't just sit around doing nothing. I have to take some safety measures. While walking carrying his handbag, he says, for now, let's rip out some pages and hide the rest. Even if I am caught, if I throw the pages on the floor, no one would know that it's drugged. We see Kim in his vigilante form on a bridge looking at his phone. While watching the hacked feed, he says, this time, he don't have his bag in his hand, he hid his book and the money. The scene shifts to an apartment complex, where the same girl who approached Kim, is sitting nervously on her bed with a note and a phone in front of her. She says to herself, I shouldn't have done the paper at the club that time. She contemplates, how was I caught? Who put this note in my handbag? What do I do? Am I going to prison? I won't be able to go back to America if I have a criminal record. On the note we see, Drugs Division's number written on it. Suddenly her phone vibrates, she picks up the phone and gets shocked upon seeing it and starts sweating. In the message it was written, within 5 minutes, head to the Busan station and make a report using the saved message. There will be some animosity involved, so it will be good if you leave the country, until the organization is destroyed. And at last it was written, thank you for your cooperation. In the next panel we see that, Duyup comes out of Kuntak Club, and while taking a smoke he says, I am about to die from nervousness. Then he says, no, it's probably nothing. Then again he says, honestly, it's too much stress. Then suddenly some cars came screeching and several policemen rushes out. Duyup notices the commotion and gets frightened. The police rushes inside the club, they shouts that this is police and says from now on, no one should leave the building, and they raid the Kuntak Club. Duyup after seeing the raid, started running. While running he curses and says, what do I do? And tries to make a call, but it didn't connect. Duyup while sweating, says, he ran. Knowing we got busted, he ran off after cutting the tail. Suddenly his phone rings, he answers the call. The person on the other side asks, Mr. Soo Duyup, where are you at this moment? Duyup started shivering. Then the scene shifts, and we see Duyup in the outskirts of the city, going into a grassy area. Duyup says, first of all, there doesn't seem to be nobody around. I hid the book and the money together. If I want to run away, I need money. When he starts searching near a rock, a figure calls Duyup's name from behind, and asks what are you looking for? Then we see the vigilante menacingly sitting on a package, on a higher ground. Duyup asks, who are you? Did Boss Sung Soo send you? Where is he right now? The vigilante says, I was worried, that you would be caught, but seeing you came here safely, this is surely the wills of heavens, and the vigilante stands up. The vigilante, while opening a small bottle further says, when I counted the money you hid, it amounted to 280 million won. It's quite an amount, why did you bury it the ground instead of storing it in the bank or your house? Then he pours the gasoline stored in the bottle on the package of money. Duyup worriedly shouts, "What are you spraying on my money?" While running up to the vigilante he shouts, "Get away from my money." And when he tries to grab Vigilante's leg, he steps back and kicks Duyup on his face. Duyup slides down and makes painful sound. Then Duyup lunges to punch the Vigilante, but the Vigilante dodges it and does the judo trick and falls Duyup to the ground with a bang. Duyup gets up and starts running away. Seeing him run away, the Vigilante says, "He's one tough bastard. I like it," and started walking towards him. While running away, Duyup notices a metal chain lying on the ground. He picks it up and swings it at the Vigilante, but the Vigilante dodges it. He yells and asks, "Who are you? Did Boss Sung Soo send you to shut me up?" He says, "Don't do this, let me go, I will not get caught, and even if I get caught, I will not say a word." And pleads to just let him run away with that money. The Vigilante says, "Sincerely apologize." Duyup was dumbfounded. The Vigilante again says, "If you sincerely apologize to the family you murdered, I will let you turn yourself in." Then Duyup changes his attitude and curses the Vigilante, and says, "You fucking scared me." With an angry face he says, "I thought the boss had sent you," and he swings the metal chain at the Vigilante. But he keeps dodging it. Duyup curses him and says, "You're making it harder than it needs to be." While swinging the chains he asks, "Are you the uncle of those dead cunts?" And keeps on swinging it relentlessly. And when the Vigilante comes forward to attack him, a metal chain comes swinging and hits him at his thigh. He screams in pain. Duyup says, "I felt that one on my hand," and asks, "What happened to your stance? Weren't you gonna avenge them?" He says, "What's going on, not going according to your plan." He keeps swinging the chain and the Vigilante dodges it with a little difficulty because of his injured thigh. Duyup stops and asks, "Are you scared or something? You think you can dodge forever? You are slowing down, you know? I can see the blood all the way through your jeans." While going to swing the chain, he shouts and says, "It's getting hard to even dodge, right? I'll split open your head." The Vigilante starts running away. Duyup while shouting says, "Look at this fucker, you are running? I thought you wanted to atone." And sarcasmically says, "Please go after receiving my apology." Then he suddenly gets shocked. We see the Vigilante holding a lit matchstick, he throws it on the package of money and it starts burning. Duyup worriedly shouts, and started running while swinging the chains and shouting, "My money." He tries to put off the fire, and simultaneously swings the chain at the Vigilante. The Vigilante steps back a little. Duyup with an angry face tries to put off the fire saying, "No no no." The Vigilante lunges to attack him, but Duyup swings the chain at him, and the Vigilante dodges it. Duyup shouts in anger, "You fucking bastard, I will kill you." Then he notices that his money is blowing away due to the wind, he shouts no. Seeing the opportunity, the Vigilante lunges at Duyup to attack, but Duyup swings his chain and it got snapped around the Vigilante's neck. The Vigilante punches him in the face and Duyup's grip on the chain got loose, the Vigilante punches his face again, and his teeth got broken. He swings around the chain, but the Vigilante swiftly dodges it, and then grabs Duyup at his waist, lifts him up and by locking his legs, makes him fall to the ground. Duyup curses him, and says to let him go. But the Vigilante tightens his grip and then twists Duyup's ankle. Duyup shouts in pain. Then the Vigilante grabs his neck, and takes off the chain that got snapped around his neck. While he was being choked, Duyup asks him to wait, but then the Vigilante stuffs the chain in Duyup's mouth, and then presses on it with force. He takes out the chain from Duyup's mouth, his mouth got bloodied. And when the Vigilante was going to hit him with the chain, Duyup while crying and fumbling says, "I will turn myself in, please spare me." Then the Vigilante says, "You didn't spare them, did you? They begged for their life, yet you even killed the children." Duyup while sobbing, says, "I was wrong, please spare me, I apologize sincerely." The Vigilante says, "Why are you apologizing to me?" He asks him to take his phone out. He says to him, to go to the victim's account. When Duyup opens the victim's account, the children were singing a song. The Vigilante says to Duyup, "Apologize to them directly. I'll send you there." He further says, "Though I don't know if you'll end up at the same place." And he started punching Duyup onto his face while sitting at top of him. The song was playing while he was punching Diyup, and then we see Vigilante punching Diyup while crying. Then we see the Vigilante walking away while limping. He then explains the meaning of the symbol of law, and says, there are people that think that, much like the water flows naturally, the law is something that causes the world to flow in orderly manner, and says, however, that is not the case. He then explains about a guarding deity of China during the Yao era, named He Qi. He says, it looked like a mix between a tiger and a bear. In addition, he had a horn upon its head. He says that, He Qi had the ability to detect good and evil, and when he identifies the sinner, he drives his horn through their body. He further says that, He Qi is a creature that symbolizes water. That's right, the symbol of law doesn't mean motion akin to the flow of water, but instead refers to the going of He Qi, the arbiter of sinners. The Vigilante with a grim expression says, yes, this is my law. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more.